Okay, let's dive in. So you've sent over this whole collection of sources, and they're all focused on Norman Vincent Peale's work. It's this whole system for successful living built really on positive thinking.
Right.
And for this deep dive, we're not really getting into a theological debate. It's more of a mission, to pull out the practical, actionable self-improvement manual that's kind of hidden inside.
That's exactly it. The material presents itself as a practical, direct action, personal improvement manual.
Right.
The whole point is to give you a set of techniques, what he called applied Christianity, so you can actively change your circumstances and, achieve what you feel is a worthwhile life.
So we're really just distilling the techniques here.
We are. And some of them are quite surprising.
Okay, so what's the fundamental assumption? Who is this manual for?
Well, the core idea is actually pretty simple, but it's also profound, is that many people are unnecessarily defeated by their problems, by the cares and difficulties of just being human.
Right, that it doesn't have to be that way.
Exactly. The source is saying these troubles don't have to dominate your consciousness.
Mm.
And so success or victory, it really all hinges on one thing, controlling the mind's thought pattern. It's a call to action against, I guess, mental victimhood.
So let's start where the text does. If it's all about your thought pattern, then the very first battle is that internal one. It's self-doubt. The first principle is just brutally direct. Believe in yourself. It says that without a, quote, humble but reasonable confidence in your own powers, you just can't have success or happiness.
That's the foundation.
But let's be honest. If someone's in a real crisis, just telling them to believe in yourself feels like a huge psychological jump.
That is a fair point. And that's why the sources immediately go to the most desperate case imaginable.
Right.
We get this really striking anecdote about a businessman. He's facing the single most critical deal of his entire career.
And he's falling apart.
Totally dejected, tormented by these profound feelings of inferiority, a total disbelief in himself. He feels completely sunk.
He needs something right now, not in a year. So what's the immediate, direct instruction?
It was an exercise in forced affirmation. He was told to repeat very specific words, phrases from Scripture over and over.
When?
That night, when he woke up, and critically, on the way to the appointment itself.
But wait, how is repeating a few phrases supposed to magically restructure years of self-doubt? Isn't that just delusion, dressed up as faith?
And this is where we find the actual mechanism. The power isn't just in the words themselves, it's in the attitude.
Yeah.
He was told to do it with an attitude of faith. So what he was doing was aggressively filling a mental vacuum. The greatest secret, according to the text, for getting rid of that inferiority complex is to fill your mind to overflowing with faith. Or, if you want secular terms, with certainty.
So it's a form of cognitive restructuring. You're just overpowering the old negative programming with new positive input through sheer repetition.
Exactly. The source calls it acquiring dynamic faith through thought disciplining. It's aggressive management of your mental diet.
And where does that old programming come from?
It's what the source calls the misty past. Maybe your older sibling always got the A's while you got C's, and that conditioned you to believe you're always second best.
So you have to re-educate your own mind.
You have to. That old conditioning is so deeply ingrained, and only relentless, repetitive suggestion can force the new, confident thoughts into your consciousness and turn your mind into a power-producing plant.
And this isn't a small problem. The sources mention a survey of 600 psychology students.
Yeah, that was fascinating.
75% of them listed a lack of confidence as their most difficult personal problem, 3 out of 4.
Right, so if that many people are operating with this mental break on, the need for a system like this is pretty clear.
Okay, so once you have that foundation of confidence, it shifts to application. How do you use this in your daily life?
And that brings us to prayer power. But the source is very quick to warn against surface skimming or perfunctory prayer. It's not enough.
It has to have depth and size. I love that distinction. There are deep prayers for your really big troubles, like that cook in Texas described.
And then there are big prayers.
Right. Harlow B. Andrews suggested that if you have a big problem, you need a big prayer, because God sort of rates you based on the size of your prayers.
And it all emphasizes intensity and belief.
Yeah.
The singer, Roland Hayes, he quoted his grandfather saying, "The trouble with lots of prayers is they ain't got no suction."
No suction. I love that. If you don't drive those intentions home deeply, they just don't stick.
They don't.
And this idea of constant repetitive intention leads right into the daily mind conditioning techniques. The traveling salesman example is just a perfect integration of that.
It really is. He had to maintain this state of confidence while he's, focused on the very transactional reality of his job.
What did he do?
He kept a pack of small cards with verses on them clipped right to his car's dashboard.
Like affirmations.
Exactly. Like, if you have faith, nothing shall be impossible unto you. And as he drove, he'd switch them out. He wasn't separating his spiritual life from his work life. He was integrating these confident thoughts directly into his consciousness during high-stress hours.
That's basically a physical reminder system for cognitive behavioral restructuring.
It is.
But the next technique is maybe the most famous one, visualization, or as the text calls it, picturization.
This is where the mind becomes a projector, not just a recorder. And the story of the estranged husband is such a powerful example of this.
Tell us about that one.
Well, his wife maintained this incredibly clear, faithful mental picture of him coming back to their old life.
What did you picture specifically?
Him sitting in his favorite chair, reading, playing golf, even something as mundane as drying the dishes. And this steady, faithful picturing of the desired outcome, which she constantly affirmed, it actually preceded the man's real return to those exact habits.
So it's not just wishing, it's like you're using your mind to create a mental template for reality.
Yes. And Maurice Flint, the entrepreneur, he had a similar experience. He was a total failure until he got the idea for the mustard seed remembrancer.
What's that?
It was a tiny mustard seed in a little plastic ball, symbolizing the faith that moves mountains. He visualized that idea, he acted on it, and it created a huge business for him.
So the principle is that the mind will work to match its external reality to whatever internal image you hold firmly.
Which is also how we're told to overcome obstacles. The sources talk about the obstacle man, whose whole habit was just focusing on difficulties.
And the counter-argument is sharp. It's, why are you emphasizing obstacles instead of possibilities?
Right, because focusing on the obstacle is what creates the difficulty.
It reminds me of that golf analogy you pointed out. The author is struggling with a tough shot from the rough, and the pro tells him the difficulty is only mental. That doubt creates physical tension, tiny adjustments in the swing that guarantee you're going to fail.
And the solution is to believe you can do it. And then just execute. Or, in the text words, just remove them. And then forget them.
But all of this aggressive mental work, the visualizing, the constant affirming, it sounds like a lot of effort. It sounds exhausting.
It can be. If you're constantly forcing your mind, you're going to generate tension.
And that's a perfect transition. Section 3 tackles the consequences of all this. Modern life, with its speed and noise, it just reduces our efficiency and causes all this emotional illness, fatigue, frustration.
Tension creates energy leaks. That's the term they use. It drains our vitality even when we think we're succeeding.
So what's the prescription?
It's radical for our age. Slow down and quiet down. 2 practical steps. First, start every day by affirming peaceful attitudes. And second, practice emptying the mind daily. A kind of mental catharsis.
And what if you can't, escape to a great forest?
Then you practice mental travel. You, quote, print on the mind the picture of the silent place and the feel of the moment, and you return to it in your memory.
It's fascinating that the sources say the mind often improves the memory.
Right. It filters out the unpleasant bits like the mosquitoes. It creates a better, more perfect place for you to retreat to mentally.
And this leads to a really unexpected source of wisdom.
The bird.
The bird. A high-strung businessman watches a bird's morning ritual for what he calls easy power.
And it's so simple. The bird stretches, takes a little nap, it stretches again, it sings a song of praise, drinks some cold water, and then it finds food.
It's an easy, unhurried start to the day.
And the man adopted this slow, easy method. He practiced sitting quietly, singing or praying, and he found it started his day without all that tension. The lesson being that intentional slowness in the morning is actually a huge efficiency boost for the rest of the day.
But the sources also make a crucial point about the body-mind connection. It's not a one-way street.
No, it's not. Your physical attitude can actually induce mental calm. The body responds to thought, but your physical actions can also regulate your mind.
Like the man who felt anger rising.
Exactly. Instead of clenching his fists, he deliberately extended his fingers and he lowered his voice.
Realizing you cannot carry on an argument in a whisper.
He used physical discipline to stop the mental escalation of the conflict. It's brilliant.
And that all feeds into a formal relaxation technique.
It does. And the very first step is so simple, but so profound. Sit relaxed, completely yield to the chair, and consciously relax every single muscle from your head to your feet.
And while you do that,
You affirm, the peace of God is touching you. It's an active, systematic surrender of physical tension to get to mental stillness.
Okay, so once the mind is calm, we have to deal with the subtle ways we sabotage ourselves socially.
The little negatives.
Yes. These small expressions of, unhappy expectations, saying things like, I'm afraid I'll be late, or I'll never get through this job.
They seem so trivial.
But they add up, they accumulate, and they condition the mind negatively.
And they chip away at the very confidence you've just worked so hard to build. And this all feeds into the idea that happiness is less about your circumstances and more of a choice.
Right. And the process is simplified, the text says, by having a childlike heart and mind, like the happy daughter Elizabeth, whose contentment just came from liking her friends and her school and her family.
But there's a huge shadow under all of this, which is the psychological distress of feeling unwanted, of feeling unneeded.
That contrast is so stark, the young doctor complaining about his phone always ringing, versus the older, retired man who is just lamenting that no one calls for his expertise anymore.
And that feeling of uselessness, we're told, it produces frustration, it accelerates aging, it causes illness.
The need to contribute is vital.
It's essential for vitality. If you feel useless, you lose your purpose. And that loss creates just as much internal tension as any external problem.
So how do you fix your social self? How do you make sure you're sought out? The advice is to become a comfortable person.
Easygoing, natural, not easily offended.
The Jim Farley example is perfect for this. The former postmaster general who was known for being incredibly popular.
What does he do?
He would go out of his way to greet the cleaning maid by name. It just showed this unegotistical, outgoing personality that made everyone feel seen and valued. It removed social friction.
And of course, the ultimate technique offered here loops back to that spiritual discipline, but with a very practical outcome.
Learning to pray for people.
Right. The text suggests that doing this actually modifies your own attitude towards them. It causes the best in both of you to flow out, and it establishes a higher unity of understanding.
You really can't actively dislike someone you're sincerely praying for.
It's very difficult, and we have to loop back one last time to health, because the cumulative effect of all these negative emotions is physically devastating.
Resentment, hate, guilt.
They produce actual chemical reactions in your body that result in ill health. We see the physician who linked cases of nervous breakdown directly to a hidden sense of guilt, which the person was compensating for with just frantic overwork.
And the most dramatic example, the young woman with recurring rheumatoid arthritis.
Yeah.
And it was clearly linked to this internal conflict over an unwanted marriage. Once that source of conflict and guilt was dealt with and removed,
The physical ailment just cleared up.
and that's the ultimate incentive to control your thought patterns. Your body is paying the price directly for the negativity you let stay there.
It is.
So if we synthesize this entire system, it's really a comprehensive regime for changing your mental environment. It requires that persistent self-confidence building, dynamic and intentional action, or prayer visualizing good outcomes, and so critically, slowing down and quieting the mind to stop those energy-sapping tensions.
The material really leaves us with a final formula for success in anything. It's a 3-step action plan. Visualize, prayerize, and finally actualize.
Explain that.
The mental vision you create and hold firmly in your consciousness, that certainty of the outcome, it will be actualized if you continually affirm it in thought and then work diligently toward it.
And finally, a provocative thought to leave you with, which builds on this idea that fear and worry are the biggest energy leaks of all. The sources say that fear is the most powerful thought, with one critical exception.
And that is faith or certainty.
Right. If you fill your mind daily with certainty, fear simply cannot live in you. Why? Because worry is largely a bluff.
The source mentions an old man who kept a worry scorecard.
Yeah, and he found that 92% of the things he worried about never happened.
92%.
So the question for you is, if your current mental energy is dedicated to fighting battles that are almost entirely hypothetical, how much wasted effort are you investing today? It's something to think about as you discipline those thoughts.